I I talked to my mom with my mom. She was like, you can go through this. And growing up the way I did, I was so ashamed of myself on that I had let this happen. I was better than this. I was stronger than this. I should have fought back more. I should have done all these things. And that I said, well, I don't want anybody to know. And so I went in June with my mom to San Antonio and I had an abortion, which was against everything I've ever taught in church. You don't do those things. You don't do those things. But my mom made a really good point. She's like, could you take care of yourself with this child in utero? Would you take care of yourself or would you turn into the statistic? Said, I'm going to turn into the statistic. I knew myself well enough. I was going to turn into that statistic, drop out of college, drop out of everything in life. I would have got homeless again. Like I couldn't sustain myself. I would have probably killed myself, honestly. And so I did the only thing I knew what to do. And in the ag industry, it's such a conservative world that if you have a child out of wedlock, then you are seen as an outcast. You cannot be a part of that community anymore. You cannot be a part of the good old boys club. And I just couldn't let that go. I couldn't do it. And so I had decided to have the abortion. I had it, my mom and I worked out a deal where she paid for it and I paid her back for it because it was my mess. So I was going to pay for it. She couldn't tell me no. I'm pretty sure she gave me back that money during Christmas the next year because all of a sudden I had all this money and I was like, oh, this is great. I didn't put two and two together till later on. And then 2 months after my abortion, we found out my mom had breast cancer again. And that was really hard for me because in the time I went to college, in that summer before college, my mom and I got the closest we had ever been.
Close.
And so I was calling my mom every day. I mean, my mom and I would talk for an hour or two on the phone some days. It was so hard for me. And this time she was like, hey, I am going to have a partial mastectomy. And I said, okay. So I was traveling back and forth on weekends to run her bread route for her. My stepdad was running her bread route
during the week.
On the week. So like he would run his bread route. And luckily he bought a small route. So he had like 6 stops. My mom had a large route. So he would go home, grab her trailer that he paid somebody to load after his route, go run her route, and then go to sleep at like 11 o'clock at night, get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, do the same thing. And then on the weekends, he would be off because he would make sure his route was run by what we call our helpers, right? Somebody that he hired in to run his route. And then I would run my mom's route. And so I would run her Saturday and Monday route on Saturday and Sunday. And then he would run the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday route because she was off on Fridays. And so that's just how we were able to work it out. And then she went through it. She got told, hey, you're in remission again. That was a really hard 6 months for us. And so by that point, I'm a junior in college, still on and off again with the same abusive guy. I finally took him home to meet my parents, to meet my mom and stepdad. That was a bad idea because we went to the casino in Louisiana because my mom liked the craps tables. And so I didn't know this until probably about a year ago, but she actually had a gambling addiction because she was so down and out on herself because she was a very strong woman before this. I mean, like this woman was my height. So I'm like 5'6", 5'5". And she was built like a tank. Like if she walked in, you would thought she was a cop of how built she was and just how her stature. And so whenever she was having to do chemo a lot, she lost that. She lost that side of herself. So we would go to the casino a lot when I was home, which no big deal. Okay, whatever. I didn't think anything of it. And so I also, again, was very sheltered still as a young adult because I didn't know any different growing up. And so we would go casino. And so I took him home one weekend. That was a bad idea. He got mad the first time my mom and I walked off together to go sit at a craps table and told my stepdad, I don't understand why she has to be a mama's girl. She's 20 something years old. She needs to live her life. And my stepdad looked at him and looked at like wherever they were sitting at, some slot machine. And I just remember him telling me, I just told him, well, you're an idiot. You're never going to last in this household because she's never given up her mama. So you either suck it up and deal with it or you leave. And sure enough, he left. So like him and I had drove and met them there in Shreveport at the casino, and he got up and left. Took my stuff with him, took everything. And then when I got home that weekend on that Sunday, because I was like, wow, that's fine. I've got another truck. Like, I'll just borrow a truck and my mom will fly down there and pick it up sometime that week, or, I'll figure it out. And when I got home, he started punching me and hitting the walls. And I finally broke down, called my college best friend, who is still my best friend to this day. And I told her, I said, Cassidy, I'm scared for my life. I really think he's going to kill me. I need your help. I need you right now. She lived literally 2 minutes down the road from me in another apartment complex. And at this point, I was in my own apartment. I lived in a 1 bedroom, 1 bath. And that was perfect for me because I had dogs. It was the best for everybody. But she got there in less than 30 seconds, I'm pretty sure. Like, she was there. By the time I hung up, she beat the cops because she called the cops and she beat them there. And I lived 2 miles from from the police station too. And so that's wild for her. So she got there, she got in between us. And this girl is 5'11", is like a stick. I mean, if you picture the tiniest human being possible, like, that was her naturally. And she got in between us and stood up to the 6'2" buff dude and said, I swear, you touch her and I will kill you. And the cops got there, broke it up between them two because that was about to be a whole ordeal, and took him to jail. And that's when I decided right then there I was done with abusive relationships. So I thought. And so I went about 7-8 months without being in a relationship. I was single. I found myself. I was going back and forth home. My best friend and I wound up taking my mom's truck home, and my best friend drove me back. And I was living life. I decided at that point I was going to be an ag teacher. I was training a 4-H horse studying team. I was on the rodeo committee for San Antonio Stock Show and Rodeo. I was doing internships. I was living my best life. Truly, at that point, I found who I was. I found my voice. And then I met a guy in the oil field my senior year. And I was like, he's it. He's my everything, my young love. And he was not physically abusive, but he was very verbally abusive, which was a lot different than what I grew up with verbal abusive, but I grew up with the physical aspect also. And so it went hand in hand. I did not know the difference. I thought it was one and there wasn't another. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so he was just very abusive. So, like, if I went out with friends without him, it was, you're a slut, you're a hoe, you're cheating on me, you're doing all these things, while he was back in Fort Worth where he lived doing those things. And that's when I started not to see myself positively again. And I fell back into that rut of not knowing who I was and harming myself and doing all these things I shouldn't have been doing because that was my coping mechanism. I took him home to meet my mom and stepdad. He put on a brave face. He put on a great face. My dad didn't really like him, but I mean, what stepdad, dad figure for any little girl? The only little girl he has, like, really likes the guy until they're married, and then he has to like him, type of thing. And so I dated him all throughout my senior year, off and on, of college, until finally I decided I was going to look for a job. I was graduating in the fall. So my freshman year, I flunked so many classes. I had to retake a bunch my senior year during the summer. Yes, I was that person. Okay. We tell our kids not to do it. I was that kid. I was that person that we tell them not to be. And so I graduated a semester later because I had to make up a lot of those courses before I could do my student teaching. Well, in the fall of my student teaching, I was doing student teaching. I kind of wisened up and I started to distance myself. So we weren't really on, but we weren't really off either. And I got a job interview at this little bitty town. It's a lot bigger than what I was used to, but in Ennis, which is about 40 minutes from south of Dallas, off 45, as a middle school welding teacher. For anybody that doesn't know, teaching middle schoolers how to weld is not it. Don't do it. It's a trap. You ever get offered a job like that, don't do it. And so I was on Tinder, go figure, right? And I swiped right on this guy that lived in Ennis, and to find out we had a lot in common. And so I totally ditched my current, I don't know what we are situation for this guy, this scrawny toothpick of a 5'10", 5'11" guy. And right after I met him, so I graduated in December. I started working at Ennis Junior High as the welding shop teacher 2 days later. So that Monday, I
Dang.
was not waiting. Girl, I needed a job. I had a truck payment at that point. I was paying on my truck. I was like, I need a job. I can't afford this life. I have standards now on what I will not drive and what I will not live. So I had this job 2 days after I graduated college with my bachelor's. And I also found out that same weekend, my mom sat me down after graduation. She said, before that, she was struggling with cancer again, but she just told me that it was like, it's popped up, but it's not that bad. I'm just going to have it all removed. She definitely chopped it up to be less than what it was. And then she sat me down that Saturday after I graduated, that Saturday afternoon. She made sure my college best friend was there. And she told me, hey, it's bad. It's in my lymph nodes. I have to have all my lymph nodes on my left and right side removed. It's going to be a really long chemo process. This time it's not going to be as quick, 6 months treatment. It's probably going to take about a year. I said, okay. And that was hard because, okay, now we've dealt with this twice. We've gone through this twice. Now we're back to a third time. Why does this keep happening? Why do you have to be so sick? This is also when we decided to get genetically tested because my mom and I were scared that since she was 32 when she originally got diagnosed, that with me being in my early 20s, I was going to be down the same path. And we wanted to make sure that didn't happen. And so her and I got tested, come to find out it was a hormone imbalance first. So it wasn't genetic. There wasn't anything we could have done to prevent this. And so while that put it to bed, it still didn't make me feel better. And I was living with her. I lived with her for about 3 months while we were going back and forth with treatments. And then COVID happened. I had just, right before COVID hit, I moved into an apartment. Me and this guy I met on Tinder were together. We were dating super early. And when COVID hit, I told him, hey, technically, if we're apart and then together, you have to quarantine. So you might as well just live here. You might as well just move in. So my husband, currently the boyfriend at this time, we're together 2.5 months before he moved in with me to my little 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment.
Wait, your current husband?
Yes. Yes, okay. Yes, I was pulling one of our kids' situations. And I also knew he had a kid. So I met his son in December, and he was about 6, 7 months old whenever I met him. And so his mom, baby's mom, hated me. Absolutely hated me. We did not get along for a very long time. We still don't really get along, but we get along better for our kid that we share together. And so I went from having no children to raising a child on our weekends because my husband would work and my boyfriend time. And so we lived together, and then he got laid off due to COVID. I was teaching virtually. Teaching shot virtually is not a thing. Not a thing. So I definitely BS'd my way through life. First year, of course, like no one knew in COVID how to teach virtually, but especially being fresh out of college, not having the ability to have a mentor because I had just started. Like there was no time to get me a mentor. Not having anybody really to talk to, just having my boyfriend who knew nothing about education, who didn't even have an associate's degree. He couldn't help me. He was just like, well, that sucks. Do your kids log on? I said, nope. I don't even know where they're at. And like, we didn't know what was going on. And so COVID, my first year teaching, my semester, I guess, was so hard. And I lost pretty much like the will to teach. And then when we went back in the fall, I was so drained because I didn't see any of my 7th or 8th graders because virtually they didn't log on. They knew the minute we told these kids, we're going to pass you. No matter what, you pass, you get to move on. it was an absolute crap show because I knew in the fall, there was no way I could keep these kids engaged. There was nothing. And so I went through the first COVID year, and I was a terrible teacher. Terrible. I hated teaching. I thought about leaving the profession so many times. I finally had a mentor teacher, and she told me, she's like, Allison, don't give up. She's like, no one knows what we're doing. So you not having the motivation to teach will go away because we'll get back to normal eventually. She told me, she's like, Allison, education will not always be an up and down. You will eventually find your why again. As in college, my why was horse stitching. It was working with those 4-H kids. That was my why. I wanted to teach kids to be leaders. That was my purpose. It wasn't really what I was doing in classroom. It was what I was doing outside the classroom with these kids. And the first year after COVID, we still couldn't do those. I mean, we were stuck in our classroom. And so I didn't have my why, my original why. And I had to re-find it. And eventually I did later on the spring semester. But her telling me that gave me the motivation that year to keep going. And eventually I did find my why of I'm doing this to make a difference in those kids' life that don't have the ability to have somebody to make a difference. And I had one little boy, his name's Dixon. He just graduated high school last year. He is probably my first like student child that I took under my wing. And like him and I are still friends. Like we're on friends on Facebook. He has my cell phone number. He calls me when he needs something. He wound up, yes, dropping out of high school, but he's now a welder with the pipeline. Like he went on, got his GED, did something with his life because school wasn't for him. And he told me, he actually called me last week after school one day and he was just like, hey, Miss Miller, I don't know what I would have done you my 7th grade year without you. He's like, I probably either would have been in jail or a drug addict at this point in my life.
That makes it worth it, huh?
It does. Now it does. Don't get me wrong. At the time, that boy and I went at it. I mean, like there was times I'd sit him in my office. I'd be like, Dixon, I literally want to slap the ever living hell out of you right now. What are you doing? But now that like he's called me and like told me all these things, it like that was my why. He was my original true why. And so in that year, post-COVID, I guess, that spring, my husband and I got married. We'd only been together a year and a half, but I was that person that if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. I didn't really care. My mom told him when he asked for my hand, she was like, well, you do know what you're getting into, right? You do know there's no take backs. There's no exchanges, no refunds. You are stuck like Chuck. And she meant it. She was dead set. There was no giving me back. And my stepdad was like, whatever her mama says is what goes. That is the law. And so we got married. And of course, I was at like, let's knock kids out. I'm 24. Like, I'm done. I ain't doing this when I'm in my 30s. And so we started having babies. So I had my first son at 20. I had just not even turned 26. I was 25.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Did you notice right away that there was a difference in him as it relates to non-abusive tendencies, any loving, any kind of character traits that made you feel safe with him versus previous relationships?
Yes and no. We definitely went through the phase of blow-ups, but he never made me feel worthless. And that was the biggest thing. When I met my husband, he never made me feel worthless. He always told me how pretty I was. He was definitely, that was in the time of our relationship where we were always in the honeymoon phase. It had never been in a honeymoon phase in our relationship. So that's what originally I perceived as love was. Like that was what love was. And I married into that. And so once we started having babies though, I learned that he was had a porn addiction and a masturbation addiction. And we got involved in the church and I started to find my faith again. And I definitely, once I found that out, I started to question God. We were taking a what they call a marriage class. It's called Re-Engaged. And we only took it because his mom and stepdad taught a class at our church. And so it was almost like an obligation. I felt like I had to please them to be a part of this like godly family. Like I had to meet their standards. And I definitely was not their standards. Be real honest with you. I hated going. I just went to it to check a box off. every week of my checklist. And so going through this class, so I learned about the addiction because one of the chapters is about revealing secrets. What have you not told your spouse? And I had a lot. Like, I never told him about my abusive childhood. Really, I never told him about my sexual assault. I never told him about how I was inappropriately touched or being homeless. I hid a lot of my life from him.
Ooh.
And I did that because I didn't think he would accept me. And so when we went through this class, and that chapter was very big for us because he confessed about his porn addiction, because I had always said, I have very few deal breakers, but that was one of them. And so he hid that from me because I had told him that while we were dating. And he knew from the get-go, I was not going to put up with this crap because I had already set a standard for myself. Any man does X, Y, and Z, I'm done. I'm washing my hands. I'm not doing this again. And I set that firm boundary for me to find somebody that wasn't abusive. And so going through that with him and learning that was hard because then I felt trapped. But I knew what I had signed up for. I knew what marriage was. I knew I didn't want my kids to go through what I went through in the divorce because my parents' divorce was nasty. I mean, they fought for off and on for custody of me whenever I did go back and forth as a kid. And so I just didn't want my kids to see that because it didn't affect me as much because I was so used to the fighting. So I was like, whatever, it's another day in the life. But so I stuck with him. I stuck it out. And I mean, we're still married, so obviously we worked it out. But at first it was a very big deal for me. And so we went through the class, we got help, we started counseling, we did all these things, but I still didn't trust him after that. And so when I actually got laid off from Ennis, so they gave me a non-renewal because I was a young teacher. The principal and I didn't see eye to eye. And that's when first time I ever learned that you're not always going to mesh as an educator with the principal. You don't always need to be together. Like, it's not always the best fit. And I blame myself because I was like, well, I'm a terrible teacher. Like, I've just built all these relationships. This is year 3, technically, for me, school year wise, with this district, because I came in mid-year and then I worked a full year and then I was in my second full year with them. So year 3 for me as an educator, I'm such a baby teacher. I didn't know non-renewals weren't a thing. No one told me that. No one tells you in college, hey, you're going to get pink slipped probably at least once in your career, and you have to put in a resignation for it not to go on your record. And so when he told me this, I'm also at this point pregnant with my first child. I'm literally about to pop. I am devastated. And so I find out later on that it's because I was the female in the shop. And he did not think I had good classroom management. And at the time, I probably didn't. In all honesty, looking back, I did not have good shop and classroom management because you don't know. You don't know until you've done it and you've taught and you've been in those situations how to manage them. And during Thanksgiving, what broke the straw on the camel's back was I had a 7th grader who was in the welding shop. I was working with another set of kids. So like we had 15 bays on one side of my shop, and then I had one table in the center. Well, first off, you're not supposed to have over 20 kids. They don't recommend over 20 kids in a shop at a time. I had 36. Okay. I could not keep eyes on everybody. So I had desk in my shop to keep them busy when they weren't in a bay. And you had to keep the curtains on the bay closed because kids were known to look at the light. Even though you tell them don't look at the light, they're going to look at the light.
That welder's burn ain't no joke.
Yes. But they don't listen. They don't care. They're like, oh, it's nice. It's so pretty. Like, these boys don't care. They got no brain cells to rub together at that age. I love them. Loved every one of them. They had no brain cells to rub together. And I had a kid. We were building turkeys. So for their first major project in 7th grade, I took different sized washers and I had them weld the washers together to build a turkey. That was our big Thanksgiving project. That's the first thing they got to take home and paint and design and really lay the foundation of what we'd be doing in the spring, getting ready for county show. Had a kid. He just finished out the welder. So his team and another team switched bays. So they were in the bay. This kid was in the bay, welded his turkey together, came back to the desk with his team after they finished, and another team went in. Well, he still had pliers on his desk because his project was still hot. So I told him each kid had a pair of pliers for them. And I told him, I said, you always leave your pliers with you, because if you need to pick your project up and it's still hot, you don't need to touch it. So always have your pliers with you. Safety first, right? We care about safety. And you sign a safety contract, parents sign it, all these things. Well, he decides, while I'm working with another group, this kid is having a really hard time putting the concept together. So I'm physically with him and his team, showing them what to do at my table at the front of the room. Well, I'm down welding. So I'm physically showing this kid how to do it. And this kid sitting at the desk that had just gotten out of the bay grabs his project with his pliers and sticks it on another student.
Oh.
And they come back. Of course, I hear the scream. And so I drop everything. I drop my welder. I drop my torque. I drop everything. I lift my hood up and I see this kid holding his arm. And I instantly know what happens. Like, you just know. And so I run over to him, breaking every rule in the book, running in my own shop. And the kids are like, "Miss, you're not supposed to be running." I'm like, "Shut up. I'm not doing this right now." Like, I'm pissed. I call my admin because I have a radio in my shop. So I radio the admin on there and I'm like, "Hey, I need help. 911. I've got a kid burned." They come down. They rush him to the nurse. We call his parents. I tell them what happened. X, Y, and Z. We do an investigation. The school comes back and this principal looks at me and he says, "If you would have been a man, it would have been different." And at the time, I did not know that was a boundary you didn't cross, right? I did not know that was something you told a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And I took that to heart. And so I quit. I quit welding. I quit taking these kids into the shop. I had 2 classes of welding for seventh grade, for 4th and 7th period. And I quit taking them into the shop. And because of that, because that principal set me up for failure, I was pink slipped. Because I was blamed for the kid being burned. And then, of course, my actions afterwards did not help any, because I quit letting kids in the shop. So I quit teaching them the way they needed to be taught, because I was scared. I didn't know. My mentor teacher wasn't an ag teacher. She was an avid teacher. So, she was never in a shop. She didn't know how to handle that situation. My teaching partner that taught wood shop next door to me, he's like, "Oh, I don't know. I've never had that happen," but he's a man. Mm-hmm. And that just laid the foundation in my male principal's brain. That's because I was a female. Even though I wasn't the best at my job. I was so young. I was so new to it. I still wasn't a bad teacher. I just wasn't good yet. I wasn't the best I could have been. But I did never have the proper coaching. I also didn't get along with the high school ag teachers because they thought my program shouldn't exist. And of course, I am OKK knows I am very defensive over my program. You don't touch or talk bad about my program. I work my butt off for it. My kids are my kids. You back off. And so that didn't help. I put myself in that situation to a point as an educator, but at the same time, I wasn't treated fairly. And I didn't know that at the time. And so I cried it out. I turned in my resignation so it didn't go against me, because I knew I didn't want that. I knew that was not okay. And so I then started to apply. I went to county show still. It was the week after I was pink slipped, literally the week after. And I was pissed. Come to find out, my teaching partner next door that taught wood shop, he was leaving because the principal made him mad. And he was like, "I've been here 20 years. I ain't got to deal with his ass." And he got up and went to a different school district too. So, in my defense, it wasn't just me. That didn't like
now
this
you're
man.
Still pregnant, right?
Yeah, I'm still pregnant. So I'm going through all this pregnant, and I'm so emotionally and physically drained. My mom tries to make it better. She takes me shopping for all the baby stuff, right? Because I'm like, first pregnancy, let's go shopping. My mom's like, first grandbaby, that's mine. Like, she loved my stepson, don't get me wrong. They were besties. But she was like, first baby I get to spoil? Absolutely. And so we go 2 days before county show, so on a Saturday. And we walk 8 miles in total because we go shopping. And I don't think anything of it. I walked 10 miles at work, whatever. Well, during county show that week, I get home. It was like the week in between. So our county show at the time was 2 weeks. So the first week was ag mechanics and like the weld off. And I did have projects. I had 8th graders taking projects. So we went and did that. And then that next week was livestock. Well, I had kids that were showing livestock as 8th graders. And so I had 2 kids with steers. I had a kid with a goat, and I think I had a kid with some chickens. I never dealt with the kid with chickens because I don't like chickens. I despise chickens. I will never help with chickens. I can't. They're gross. They're nasty. They poop everywhere. I just can't do it. I had to have a boundary, and chickens are my boundary. And so I go home that weekend, and on Sunday morning, so I've done ag mechanics with my kids. I have the next week off also because I'm going to support, even though I'm not over livestock, I'm still going to support my kids and go and like make sure that they're good, help them where I can. I'm not helping my chicken kid. I told him, I said, I told him, I was like, you're on your own. I'll be in the stands cheering you on. I'm not touching them. I said something like that. His dad was like, you have to be a special kind to raise chickens. I was like, well, I ain't special. I ain't your kind of special. And so I get up Sunday morning. We're getting ready to go to church. It's like 7:00 in the morning. My pregnant butt, of course, when I'm pregnant, you pee all the time. And so I was like, I got to pee so bad. Well, I go potty and my water breaks. I didn't know though. So I just like it keeps going and going and going. I'm like, dang, it's taking a lot longer than it should. And so, of course, like any 20-year-old, I have my phone. I have my phone with me in the bathroom, whatever. I call my best friend that I had made in Ennis who had kids. And I was like, I don't know what's going on. How do I know if my water broke? And she's like, what? And I said, yeah, I think my water broke. She's like, what do you mean? I'm 35 weeks pregnant at this point. So I'm early. So like if my water breaks this term, it's preterm labor. And she's like, well, you have to sniff it. And I said, I'm not sniffing that. You lost your mind. And I start freaking out on her, right? Like, she's like, Allison, first off, calm down. It's not going to kill you. And so my husband is a sniffer. Funny story about my husband. First time I ever figured out he was a sniffer, he sniffed money. Okay. I've worked in fast food, worked at a bar. I've seen money come out nasty.
Right.
Nasty.
All kind of places. Yeah.
Oh, girl. I've seen a kid pull his shoe off, pull his sock off, and then grab money. I said, that is disgusting. Disgusting. But I found out my husband's a sniffer. So he sniffs everything. Like, even if you meet him now, 31-year-old man, he still smells everything. Everything. He smells new shoes, weird shoes. I don't know. He's weird. We all have our quirks. I guess that's his. And so she's like, you need to get a ear swab and swab down there, right? Swab down there and have him sniff it. If it doesn't smell like anything, your water broke. If it smells like something, you peed yourself. You're fine. And so,
okay, that's new, different.
I'm like, oh, this is weird. I'm like, my husband and I just got done going through counseling over his, what I felt was like an affair on our marriage with pornography and masturbation, all these things. And I just remember going to him 7:15 in the morning. I'm like, you just sniffed this. He's barely awake. And this man rolls over and he's like, there what? What do you want? And I was like, sniff it. He didn't ask a question. He just sniffs it. And I'm like, okay, this is why I know you're weird. Like, this is how I know. And he sniffs it and he's like, I don't smell anything. And I'm still on the phone. Like, I still have the phone to my ear. I have the Q-tip in my other hand, putting it in his nose, like, sniff it. And I'm like, he said he doesn't smell anything. And she's like, you need to go to the hospital. You need to load up in your car. I'll call your mom, go to the hospital. I was like, why? I'm fine. She's like, no, I'm still like, you're in labor. And then I put on speaker. I said, will you tell Tyler that? And so she does. And he's like, no, she's not. She is not in labor. Like, you're lying. We still have like 3 weeks. We had just scheduled my induction because we're supposed to go to Las Vegas on my birthday, which is also my due date. And he's like, we're not. You're smoking something. He's like, you on something. We ain't going nowhere. And so I start packing a bag because I'm like fully, I'm committed at this point. Like, this is what's happening. I trust this person with my life. I said, we're going. We're going to hospital. And so I start packing a bag and I tell him, I said, you need to go with me or you can stay here and look like a dumbass. And he's like, well, it's going to look really bad if I don't go with my wife to the hospital and you call me and say I'm in labor. So this fool, I have a hospital bag. I have the baby stuff. I have my stuff. I'm ready. He takes a charger and a hoodie. That's it. And we go. I go into the emergency room, Waxahachie, Texas. I walk in, I'm like, I think my water broke. And she's like, is this your first child? I said, it is. It certainly is. And she's like, yes, ma'am. I can tell. Okay. Let me get you a wheelchair. I said, no, I can walk. She's like, no, you cannot. She puts me in a wheelchair, rolls me up to labor and delivery. They, do the swab or whatever to test for amniotic fluid. And my husband's like, we're going to be gone in like an hour. This was stupid. We missed church for nothing. I said, okay, we'll just see. So we bet. Right, my husband and I have this bet. I said, if it's true, I'm in labor, you owe me some fuzzies taco after this baby is born. I said, you owe me fuzzies.
Taco.
Yeah. And so, not even. I mean, this woman does swab, sends it off to the lab. I'm telling you, probably not even 10 minutes later, she comes back in with this armful of stuff. She's like, we're having a baby. And my husband looks at me, looks at her, and says, no, we're not. And she said, oh, yes, you are, son. And then I have to call my mother. My mother is in Oklahoma at the casino. Go figure, whatever. And I tell her, I said, hey, I'm having a baby. She's like, you're a what? Tyler said, yeah. Can you bring me some underwear and clothes, please? I ain't got nothing. And so then my mom is having to shop for this man because she's like, well, I'm not coming to your house. I'm not going through your drawers. I don't want to know what's in your drawers. So then she goes to Walmart. She buys all this stuff for my husband, shows up. We have our baby. We are stuck because I was preterm. I was only at 35 weeks and some days. I have to stay for 48 hours. The baby doesn't stay in NICU, but he does have to stay like 48 hours in the hospital with me to make sure everything's good. Luckily, he was fine, right? Like we were past the point of everything being good, but just for safety and protocol, we had to stay. So we have our first kid, Gunner. He's perfect in every little way. He's great. He's the sweetest little baby. So, of course, we have another one. Well, 6 months after we have Gunner, my mom calls me and says, my back hurts really bad. And I said, okay, we'll go to the chiropractor. Like, okay, go to the doctor. I don't know what to tell you. I can't help you. She said, no, Allison, my back hurts. And her back had hurt with her previous role of breast cancer, but the doctor always chalked it up to the fact that she was having so much stress on her body. She was having another surgery. She had to have the rest of her mastectomy. She had all these lymph nodes taken out. So like it was just a lot on her body. Well, come to find out, she had metastatic breast cancer. And all that means is that, yes, even though she didn't have breast anymore, her original cancer was breast cancer and it was the same genetic markers, same like cell markers. So wherever the cancer started, metastatic just means it moves. So wherever it started, they continue with that type of cancer, but it's just moved. So now she has metastatic breast cancer in the bone. So she had lesions throughout her entire spine. She had them in her arms, her hips, and her feet. And I was on my way home I had gotten a job in Irving at the time, and I was on my way home from work. I was driving 45 minutes home and back from work one way. And so I was driving home when she calls and tells me this, and she's crying. I'm crying. I'm driving on 65. I'm in tears. I have to pull over. And I Google it right then and there. How long what is your life expectancy? Because she tells me it's stage 4. There's nothing they can do. They can try treatment, and we're going to try treatment. She's like, I'm going to do everything I can to be there for that baby. And that was hard because when I looked it up, on average, if you have metastatic breast cancer or metastatic cancer in general that moves to the bones, you at most have 5 years before it totally takes you and you can't do anything. And that was hard because my mom was so independent. I had learned over my college years to be independent, not only from when I was a kid, from watching her do it, but from watching her in my college years really show out and do the things she loved and be the person she wanted to be and know what that was like. And I learned how to be independent in a healthy way through college and through these first few years of teaching from her. And that was really hard for me to know I was going to lose my mom, to know that I had a timestamp on how long I had with my mom. And I was 24, 25. No, I was 25. I was 25 when I got that phone call in September. And I had this little 5-month-old baby that had spent, I mean, we spent almost every weekend with my mom. She wanted the babies and the kids all the time. And so that was hard. That was the hardest thing I ever heard at this point in my life. And so my husband was in between jobs at this moment. And so he was able to go, and during the week, he went and lived with my mom and stepdad. So he would run the route with my mom, take her to her doctor's appointments during the weeks, because my stepdad was running 2 routes at the time to
His
make
and
up.
hers.
Right. And so my husband went to help out and to work. And then on the weekends, he would come home to me with the baby and all these things. And that was a lot of help. And that's when my mom and him really bonded, because before that, he was just my husband. Like, my mom was like, whatever, like, you're the family. Yeah, but you're the dad to my grandkids. Like, I love you, but that's the only relationship they had. And then they got really close running those routes together. And so my mom and I, like, I was always there for her. Every weekend we were there. I was helping her as much as possible. But I watched my mom go within 4 months, go from this really strong, independent human being to somebody that couldn't even get up and walk. And by Christmas, she was thin and bone. So, like, okay, hey, you've seen me. My mom was built like me, right? Very stocky, very wide boned, big boned. We very much like we're just going to go and do it type of person. But at that point, by Christmas, my mom, she was not my mom. She could not get up. She could not go to the bathroom by herself. She was doing chemo 4 days a week. She had a port where they were doing a port chemo. So it was in her chest right here. She had breast reconstruction surgery before that and had complications from it. So she was in between having another reconstruction surgery on top of that, and couldn't do that because of the chemo. And then, I mean, it just all added up. And my stepdad, who I call my dad now, at this point, I hadn't talked to my real dad in 4 years. So, like, he wasn't even in my life. I had given up on him a long time ago. And my dad and I kind of just looked at each other one day and we were like, she might have another year. Like, she's fighting, she's trying. But I think we have a year. Let's make the most of it. So we planned like all these trips. We were going to do all these things with her. And in March of that year, right before my oldest son turned 1, she started going in and out of the hospital. She couldn't keep anything down. She was falling a lot. I'm pretty sure she broke a couple bones, but then just never told us. And so, since she was so malnourished, because her body just couldn't keep anything in. I mean, all she could eat was rice. That's all she could physically eat. And she could only eat about like a handful of rice at a time. So since she was so malnourished, her body would bruise from anything. So if she did have broken bones, we would have never known. And pretty sure she broke her arm a couple of times because she wouldn't use it for a few weeks. And then, like, in between this, and then she would, start using it slowly again, but she never told anybody. And then she started going in and out of the hospital. She missed my oldest son, my now 4-year-old, his first birthday party. And so I literally FaceTimed her. So she was on FaceTime at his birthday party instead of there because she was in the hospital. 2 hours before his party, I was in the hospital with her, visiting her. And that was the last time I got to see my mom in person because she refused to see me after that. I was devastated because I felt like it was my fault. My mom didn't want to see me because I pushed for her to do, at this time she was only doing chemo, and I was pushing, the doctors wanted her to do radiation because they wanted to physically target these lesions because they said that would help her pain. And I told her, I said, you need to do it. I don't care what you have to do. I don't care what pain you have to go through. You need to do the radiation to end the long term, keep you here longer. Because it was selfish. Like, I wanted her here. Mm-hmm. And so I think I pushed so hard that she just didn't want me to see her anymore, see her go through this. She finally did go through radiation. And between the first time she went into radiation and the last time I saw her, that would be the last time that I saw her. And I was on my way back. It was April 12th of 2023. And I was on my way back from Stephenville. I had gone with my entomology team and my horse judging team from Irving. And we were gone to our area contest. So like this is like the big contest if you go to state or not. And so we were at Chili's. The kids were at Chili's and we were literally right behind Chili's because me and the other ag teacher hated Chili's, but the kids loved it. And so we said, okay, boo-boos, you go there. We're going to be right behind you eating tacos. Because there was a good old taco joint in Glen Rose, Texas. And it's closed down now. And I'm so sad that it closed down. Every time I go through Glen Rose, I look at that spot and I miss it. I miss my tacos. And I miss the quesadillas. And so we were sitting there. And my dad calls me, which not new. Okay. Every time my mom would go into the hospital, he'd call me. So I just thought he was calling me to let me know my mom's back in the hospital. Well, he was. But he was crying. And I was like, I've never seen this man cry. Ever. Never seen him, never heard him cry. Nothing. And he says, Allison, it's time. And I said, what do you mean it's time? He said, Allison, you need to get to the hospital in Athens now. Your mom's not going to make it. And I remember sitting in front of that restaurant, devastated because I knew my timestamp had hit. My mom was diagnosed in September. I thought we had 5 years. I thought we had a year. I had 3 weeks. And I hadn't even seen my mom since then. And that was a really hard pill for me to swallow. And so I went inside. I told the other ag teacher, I said, I'm so sorry, but I have to leave. Like, I have to get my kids. They need to check out now, and I have to leave. My ag team knew kind of what was going on because I was in and out of my classroom a lot on Fridays. Like, I would leave early. My conference was 7th period, and so she would watch my 8th period for me, and my admin kind of knew what was going on. And I was like, I have to leave. And so I called my our team lead, Spiller, and I said, Spiller, I need you to meet me at transportation, which was across town from the school. I need you to bring the ag truck because I need you to get these kids from me. I need my car because in Irving, you have to park your car where you get the school vehicle and leave it there because that's how you check it in and out. It's through your vehicle. So you have collateral. So you bring it back that day. And so I was like, I need my car. I have to go. I have to be in Athens. My mom is dying. And he was like, what do you mean? I said, don't ask me questions. I'm not going to answer anything. My mom is dying. I need you to meet me there. I will be there in 45 minutes. I got there in 30. Don't get me wrong. I should not have gone that fast with kids in the car. I understand that. But at the time, like, I was seeing red. I was so mad. I was so angry. I called my husband. I was crying while I was driving my kids in the car. Bless their hearts. They still call me Day. I love them. They're my trauma children, is what we call ourselves. We're the trauma group for the ag teacher and the kids because they watched me at my lowest. In that moment, those kids were seeing me at my lowest and they were so respectful and they were so good. And I love them to this day and they know that. But I physically could not talk to somebody that was an adult. So I talked to my husband the entire way. My husband dropped everything at work. He had just gotten a job at a new electrical company there in town in Ennis. And he golf phoned me for like 0.5 seconds. Called his boss and said, I'm leaving the job site. You're going to have to come get the guys. He was the driver of the truck. He was like, you're going to have to come get them or you need to come. Something needs to happen. I need my truck. My wife's mom is dying. She's in the hospital. She's not going to make it. And I got from Irving. So from Irving to Athens is an hour and 45-minute drive. I got there in an hour. I was going at 120 miles an hour with my flashers on through Dallas. Not safe whatsoever. Luckily, I didn't have any kids with me. I called my grandmother who had my baby at the time because she watches the babies until they're 2. And I called her and said, Grandma, mom's dying. I said, my mom is dying. I need you to take Gunner I had told my best friend through text, I said, I need you to watch Gunner for a few days. And she said, okay, because we had come up with a game plan. If, I ever told you I need you to watch Gunner, I just need you, no questions asked, to watch him. She said, okay. And so I called my grandma, said, I need you to take Gunner to Rachel's and I need you to come to Athens. I need you to be there. And she beats me there because she's a lot closer. And so she does. She takes Gunner. I'm there in an hour. It takes me an hour to get to Athens. I'm going 120 at some point. I walk in. My dad is hysterical. He can't talk to the doctors. This is the love of his life. They've been together for 15 years at this point, 16 years. And he had watched her depreciate through this a lot more than I had. I had watched a lot of it, but he watched the majority of it. And I remember sitting there listening to the doctors and nurses. And I just said, and she was intubated. And I said, what's the likelihood she can come out of this? What can she make a recovery? Can she live, even if it means she's on oxygen for a year? Like, can she leave this hospital? And they said no. The minute we take the tube out of her, I don't know when she'll pass, but she will not make it. Her body, her organs are shutting down. Her body is shutting down. It's done. It's giving up. And I said, okay. So I look at my dad and I said, what do you want to do? I said, you're technically her, medical proxy, whatever you want to call it. I was like, what do you want to do? He said, this is not my mom. I can't make this decision. So I had to make the decision. We are going to pull the plug on my mom. But I told him, I said, I can't do it until my husband gets here. Because I know you can't be in the room when this happens, but I can't let her die alone. I will not let my mom die in a hospital bed by herself. And in Athens, how it is that the hospital rooms have, on the first floor where ICU is, has a patio area that has a kind of like a man-made river within the hospital. It's very serene. It's very, tranquil. It's meant to cause peace and stuff like that. And it's very nice. Okay. I said, you can sit out there by the river, by the water, and I will sit in here with mom for as long as it takes. And so I do. Tyler gets to the hospital about 7:00, and I tell them, okay, you can take her off life support. And they do. She holds on. And I just remember sitting there. I remember looking at my mom. And of course, when somebody is in that stage, like they're not coherent, like she's so sedated, she's so out of it, she's not even really there anymore. I tell her, I said, Mom, we're okay. It's okay to let go. It's okay. Dad and I will figure it out, because her biggest worry in life was always that him and I would fight it out when she passed. Like him and I wouldn't get along. And I said, Mom, I've got this. I got Dad. It's okay. I got Gunner. I got Brayden. I got Tyler. Like, I got this. And at 25, I sat there with my husband by my side, and I watched and listened to my mom take her last breaths. And as soon as it happened, I just walked outside and I broke down with my dad for a minute. And our neighbors, who were lifelong friends of hers, were there. And, we had our moment. And then I dried it up, sucked it up, walked out, walked into the hallway to the nurse's station. I said, hey, she's passed. Can you please come do your check? Because they had told me, like, hey, once it happens, take a moment. But within a few minutes, we have to come check her to, call time of death. I said, okay. So I do. I go to the nurse's station, which is literally 2 doors down. And I tell them, hey, she's passed. She's gone. And the nurse says, okay, I'll be there in just a second. She follows me back into the room. She does the, time of death with the doctor. And she's like, what would you like to do now? My stepdad's like, I can't do this. This is the love of his life that just died. And so I had to make all the really hard decisions of where was she going to go? What funeral home was she going to? She wanted to be cremated. I already knew that. Like, I knew what she wanted when she passed. We'd had those conversations with her first round because we didn't know what to expect for cancer. And so we had all had that conversation. And so I already knew. I'd known for years. And I stood there and I said, I want her to go here. I want her to be cremated. What do I need to do? What paperwork do I need to sign? So I do all this paperwork. And they were like, well, you don't have to wait with her. Like, we'll wait with her. Somebody will stay in the room. I said, I'm not leaving my mom. You can kill me before I leave my mother. And so my grandmother was there, her mom. My dad had already left. My grandma says, well, I can't stay. It's late. I need to get home. And I sat there and I waited with her with my husband. And I didn't really cry at this point. It hadn't really hit. Like, I was devastated. I just lost my best friend. But I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to act. I didn't know how to grieve. And so I waited. The funeral came about 2 hours later. And I, I walked them out with her body and sent her to be cremated and made the appointment for the next morning. Cause I mean, it's like 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. Like, no one's in the office. And so I made the appointment. Hey, I'll be there at 10 o'clock tomorrow with my dad. Like, we'll be there. We'll make the arrangements and go through that process. And so I, of course, have already told my admin. Luckily, I had the best APM principal anybody could ask for at this time. I had called them, put them in a group chat, and said, hey, I will not be there for a few days. I had a greenhouse sale on Saturday, right? Like, this is happening on Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday. I was like, I have a greenhouse sale on Thursday or on Saturday. I won't be there Thursday, but I'll be there Friday afternoon for that greenhouse sale on Saturday. I literally got threatened not to be renewed if I showed up. They were like, do not do that. Like, take your time, be with your family. And so I did. Of course, I was petrified of losing my job. I had just lost my job in Ennis. So I was like, no, absolutely not. Okay. Yes, sir. And so I went through the motions. We did all of that. And then I kind of just buried it. I didn't have my emotions. It was very strange living, like being in her house. I stayed with my dad for a few days because I didn't want him to be alone. But like, I didn't really cry. I didn't have those initial emotions you would have thought I would have had after the initial breakdown. That would come later on. And so I went on living life. In May, we had her end of life celebration. She didn't want a funeral. She wanted a party. She was more of like the life of the party type of human. And so we had like this big gathering. A friend of ours that is up the road from her house owned a shop in an event center. And so he was like, hey, you have her visual, whatever you want to have here. Like, you can have the whole space. There's a kitchen there. So we had burgers and stuff catered in, and it was a good time. But that's when I actually broke down, was talking about my mom. That's when I broke down for the first time since she died. And that was hard because I don't break down. I don't cry. I don't cry in front of people. I don't show my emotions. I either get mad or I'm happy. That's all you get from me. And so we do
I have
that.
a question.
Yeah.
So at this point in your story, what would you like for our viewers to get from your story?
So I had actually 2 weeks before my mom passed told God, if you're gonna take her, take her. If you're gonna heal her, heal her. We're not doing this in between anymore. I can't do it. She can't do it. I can't do it. And I made a deal with God, which, okay, I understand you're not supposed to do. And I said, if you take her or if you let her live, either way, by the end of this year, I promise to give myself to you. I promise to turn everything over. And in 2 weeks, I had my answer. And so I did. After the wake, I definitely didn't do anything in between, like her passing and her celebration of life, her wake. I did. Right after that, I started going to church. I decided that I was going to get into CR, which is Celebrate Recovery. And that's when I actually found faith. That's when I found myself in God. And that's when I found myself in my marriage, because I knew who to depend on, because he was going to take care of me. Might not be in the way I wanted, but he was going to take care of me. And that was hard. That was really hard for me to admit to anybody. And then I very quickly in CR, you have the ability to go through a biblical 12-step. That's more than just about like alcohol awareness or drug use, things like that. It walks you through a 12 step, but it's not your traditional 12 step of what you would think of. It's more based on what you're going through, and it's just the biblical side of it, but it walks you through the same 12 principles. And I went through a 12 step. And when I tell y'all, that was the first time in my life I ever told anybody about all of my trauma and everything I'd gone through. And I finally laid it all out. I finally told my truth. How much relief it was to tell somebody else my story and not be judged, not be told I was wrong, not be told you deserved that, was the first time that I felt seen. And I think that's why I want people to always get from my story is that no matter what you go through in life, there's going to come a time where somebody asks you what your story is.
Mm-hmm.
And where did you end up with that story? What did you do to change your story for the better? And I want people to hear my story, and I want people to say, you know what? I'm in that abusive relationship. If that's what's waiting for me on the other side, I can leave this relationship. It might be hard. It might not seem possible then, but find that one person that's going to help you get out of that situation. If you have a parent at a young age that's dying of cancer, you can survive afterwards. It might not feel like it. It might not seem like it, but you can survive afterwards somehow. I went through my 12 step, and that's the first time I ever felt like that. It's also the first time I was ever asked to be in a mentor program for teenagers, because one of the girls in my 12 step, and of course, like, your 12 step group is anonymous. Like, you don't talk about, like, you don't name the other people, but you can talk about like certain things. And so she came to me and she's like, hey, I can't tell your story. I can't talk about what we've done, but I am in a mentor program and I really want you to come and be a part of it. That's the first time I ever mentored a student in a high school setting that needed an adult. Officially. Like, as a teacher, you always kind of do that, but it's more like under the table.
Right.
It's not official.
Open. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this was the first time I did it out in the open. And it was a girl I had actually taught in Ennis. And come to find out, she was sexually assaulted. She was sexually abused. And I never knew. And I looked back at it and I was like, wow, you did the same exact thing I did. And then I started telling my story everywhere. So that's when I got asked to tell my story to everybody in Celebrate Recovery at both locations, the Waxahachie campus and the Ennis campus. And within my entire story, if no one gets anything else, since my mom has passed, I've gotten a master's. I'm getting my second master's in administration. I graduated in a month. Thank Jesus. I'm so done with education at this point, like, for myself, not for others. And I just want people to realize that tough times don't make you. Tough times build you. Tough times are when you find your way to God, no matter who that God is. I don't care if you're a Buddhist, but the minute you go through a tough time and you find that thing to lean on, that's what you lean into. And while, yes, I'll tell you all day long what I believe, but as long as you have something to believe in that's greater than you, you're going to find your way out of it, no matter what that looks like.
Well, and if you.
Yeah. And so that's me. It's a lot.
Thank you so much for just being open and willing to come and share with us. And I appreciate you. We don't take it, lightly when we ask people and they actually say yes.